Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you can hear me, we're going to take another minute or two just to get settled in before I introduce myself and Jay and the event. So sit tight. Start at approximately 1 after the hour, maybe 2 after the hour at the latest. Just to give people a chance to get here, to get settled. Welcome. And I'll just keep repeating myself just as people continue to join. All right, everyone. One more minute and then we'll get going. And over the next minute, what you can do, hello, yeah, Amit. You could share your greetings in chat if you'd like to. You can get yourselves ready to go. So one of the things you might want to do is remove distractions from your space. I know we're wired for multitasking, especially in our virtual environments. And so if there's something that's going to keep pulling your attention, just see if you could close it, minimize that tab, or close out that program, or mute those notifications. Maybe you take your phone, put it on do not disturb, put it over to the side, just for you, just so you could be here and be in the conversation today. But I'm loving the greetings that we're seeing. We're about to get going in just a minute. So we got people in Boston. What's up, New Jersey? The Hague. Probably saying that wrong. Welcome, Arkansas, California, Maryland. Hello. Canada, hello, our northern neighbors. What's up, DC, Texas, Toronto? Cool. People from all over the world. That's one of the things I love about, I mean, come on, we're talking about hybrid, distributed work. We get to work with people all over the world. That's one of the things I love about my job. Welcome, Ireland. Phoenix, what's up? India. Is it Atish? Welcome. And we're going to be looking at chat as a great way to participate today, since we have a lot of people here. We got like over 100 people now. So welcome. If you're just getting here, get settled in, remove distractions, say hello in chat if you'd like to. What's up, Albany? Nova Scotia. What's up, Halifax? So many people all over the world. Love it. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to my friend, my collaborator, Jay from Charter. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off today?
Thank you, Brendan. Hi, everybody. I am Jay Loff from Charter. I'm one of the co-founders here, and on behalf of all of us at Charter, I want to thank you for spending time with us this afternoon and joining this, our second in our new series, the Charter the Charter Leadership Masterclass powered by LifeLabs Learning. You may recall we kicked this program off in December of last year. And this is the first this year of a quarterly round of these series that we'll be doing together. These are designed to try to help you develop additional skills, fresh ideas to tackle the thorny issues that you wrestle with every day when it comes to workplace and workforce management. That's what this is all about. And that's something that Charter helps you do every day as well. So for those of you who might be less familiar with us at Charter, we help you deliver on your workforce transformation, your workplace transformation initiatives through freely available newsletters, email newsletters, a pro membership that you can join for CHROs and their teams, and programming like this, live programming that is both virtual and in person. So I hope that you will investigate any of that at charterworks.com. You should see a link in the chat, I think, at some point. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to work with you on all of your workplace transformation initiatives if we can. We're really excited and proud to have this now years long, almost 3 years, I think, Brendan, partnership with LifeLabs Learning. We've done different iterations of these programs. And as all of you know, they do development and training for hundreds of thousands of employees all around the world, as we're seeing on this call today. So we're grateful for this partnership with you all. But let's jump to the topic today. Despite all of the headlines around RTO and all of the conflict around mandates to come back for 5 days a week, I suspect that any of you who are on this call have already made the decision that hybrid is the way to go for you. And I would say that our own research and the research that we steep ourselves in every day concur with you that that is a great way to go. But it's one thing to decide that's what we're going to implement. It's another thing to actually execute on that. And Brendan and LifeLabs Learning are going to help us really learn how to execute with excellence on a hybrid regimen at the office. So Brendan, take it away.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you to Charter. Welcome. Hi, everybody. My name is Brendan. I am a leadership trainer, facilitator, coach, and I manage our East Coast facilitation team here at LifeLabs Learning. So I'm really excited to talk to you about hybrid readiness today because my background is in organizational psychology. Some of you know what that is, some of you don't. But in what it really means to me is that I study people in the workplace. And for over 10 years now, as a coach, a consultant, a facilitator, a manager, a leader, I played a lot of different roles and worn a lot of different hats, just like some of you have. But I ultimately care really deeply about two things, which are how do you help people perform their best and feel their best at work? How do you keep people really working towards high performance, but also staying engaged at the same time, staying motivated at the same time? And that's many of you, I know that that's like your biggest, some of your biggest challenges that you're dealing with and some of your biggest focus areas. And that's what I care about. And luckily at Life Labs, and we have a bunch of people who are really interested in what is the research telling us, and specifically not just the research. Once we look at the research, then what are people actually doing in the workplace? What are the managers, leaders, teams, organizations, folks in people operations, HR, you name it? What are they doing to help people perform at their best and feel their best at work? So today we're going to really zoom in on being hybrid, remote, or virtual and in person, and a combination of all those things. Some of you might call it managing distributed teams. And what we're going to do is cut through some of the noise. You know, there's lots of articles and blogs and research, and there's nothing wrong with reading all of that. We dive into a lot of that research on hybrid readiness. What I'd like to do, and what we do at Life Labs, is we like to simplify complexity. And today you're going to walk away with three areas, right? So of all of the things that might be challenging you, or all the things you might be worried about, we're going to focus just on three specific areas that we see you can make a really big impact, whether you're a manager or a leader, an individual contributor, right? That's what we're going to get into. And just something to name is, despite, now we've had a few years, if not more, 5 years or more of working in remote or hybrid environments. It's relatively new, folks. It is. I want to normalize that the rate of change has been incredible. And, it wasn't that long ago that we just had, everyone was going to work in one place, long days, long hours. Only in 1979 did we have a researcher who started looking into the possibility of flexible work. That's where we got the term telecommunications. I think it was Nick Niles who actually started that. He was a researcher. And only then did we see telecommunication, how did that go? Well, that 1979 flexible work campaign didn't work out so well. Only until around 2010 did we start to perhaps even adopt the telecommuting or that flexible work. And so when we get to 2019, the year before the pandemic, there's going to be different estimates, but roughly only about 5% of the time was spent working remotely for people across the world, which I know for some of you might be a surprise. Some of you may have been remote workers, or you worked part-time from home or sometimes in the office. So maybe you were in that 5%, but that wasn't very much. And then you get to 2020, and at the peak of the pandemic, there's going to be different numbers that come here, but roughly 42% of people were working remotely. And that number is going to fluctuate depending on where you are in the world. And what we found is that from that 2020, once the pandemic lifted, you felt this, which is the pull back to the workplace. So then you go from just working remotely to about 25% in 2022, we're working hybrid. So just a few years ago, right, we about 25% of the workforce is going hybrid. It's not that, not that new. And then in 2024, right, the end of last year, roughly 50% or more, right? I think it was 56% according to certain polls, looking at 56% in the United States specifically working in hybrid. And so the reason I share this with you again is to normalize that we've shifted very quickly, even though we felt like we've been doing this for a while. So it's okay if your organization is still figuring things out, if you as an individual are being challenged with what to do or how to feel about remote work, hybrid work, going back to the office, all of those things. It's really normal because we're still in this process, this messy middle, as I'll mention. And I think it really goes to this bottom piece. The rate of change has been so fast. We're still new to this. We have a lot of organizations getting into hybrid work. Hybrid and adaptivity skills are going to be really key for the future. And that's what we're going to focus on. Like, what are some key skills that individuals, managers, and teams can really develop, and areas that we might focus on? And when I say that we're new to this, we go back to this, for those of you who heard of the canary in the coal mine. So you see these two birds here, the canaries. And the canary, it's not necessarily a good thing that we did this, but sending a canary into a coal mine, if the canary was impacted negatively health-wise, we knew, oh, that coal mine is not safe for people. And I think in many ways you are on this call because you're trying to act in some ways as a canary for your organization as you continue to be or work towards a hybrid work environment. You want to be able to sniff out what's not working, what is not really optimized for us. And a few issues, even terms to figure out is, okay, where are we in the messy middle of hybrid work? And sometimes that messiness might come from both ends of hybrid work, which are, or there's multiple ends, you might say, which is like the remote side of being hybrid, the in-person side, the combination of the two, the messy middle of working across geographies and time zones, things like that. There's also this hybrid pendulum that I know many of you are feeling. That's okay, where you're getting mandates. I know some of you, in fact, if you go to the chat, just give me, if you hit go to the chat and there's a little emoji button and the hybrid pendulum. So I want you to click on an emoji for this. If you put an emoji for how you may have felt about being shifted into a hybrid work environment. So this may have already happened for you, but the hybrid pendulum is like so many people were swept into it. You just went from remote to boom, we got to go hybrid. How have you felt? Just in general, like how have you felt about going hybrid? Be honest. Some of you are really happy. Not everyone, like so some are really happy, and there is a lot of positive about going back to the workplace, some people being in person. But I know for many of you, and at least some of the employees that you work with, saying, oh, you have to go back to the office, or we want to spend time in person, or here's the new schedule, has not felt the best. So here's what I like. There's a lot of positive side to this. Going hybrid, there's a lot of positive aspects to it. People are totally fine with working remotely, and some people are totally fine with being in person. Yep, right. Lisa's like, I love it. Just one day per week. Yeah, there's a bit of autonomy sometimes involved where it's like I get to decide how often I go to the workplace. So that's always good. Fairness. Yep. For the first time, right? Some people are saying that fairness has really been a positive aspect of it. Good. So today is not about saying that going hybrid is bad and there's the challenges are outweigh the cons outweigh the pros. That's not it. It's just being ready for the typical issues that tend to come up in a hybrid environment. That's it. So something that we're not going to do today is tell you exactly when people should come into work. I can't do that. It is individualized, and we're still in the messy middle of figuring out when should people come to work. We're not going to tell you how many days people should be in the office or virtual. We're not here specifically to talk about certain hybrid setups where, what if I have X amount of employees who are fully remote and Y amount of employees who are in person? Like, there are so many different setups that encompass hybrid. We have a lot of information that we're going to send you, and you're going to see a link in chat for our hybrid and remote work playbook. Now, it captures years. I'm talking about pre-2020. years of research that we had throughout, before the pandemic, throughout our experiment in remote work, we've captured a lot of information for you to take with you. So if you click on the link in chat, you can get that remote work playbook, and it's got a lot of logistical things that may help you. But we're really gonna cut through some of that noise. It even has an audit for yourself, right? So if you get that playbook, it's going to have a link to a hybrid readiness audit, which we put together that deals with some of the challenges that we're going to talk about today, which is great. So if there was some takeaways today that you were worried about, like, ooh, I think this area is a area to focus on for my managers, leaders, and teams, don't worry. We're going to give you a hybrid readiness audit that you can keep understanding where your opportunities are. But I want to get into this. Okay, so wherever you are in your journey, there's all the positives about being hybrid. But at LifeLabs, one of the things we do is we train and develop leaders, managers, and teams. So you heard that from Jay. I've been doing that for over 6 years now at LifeLabs, working with leaders, managers, and teams at thousands of different companies. You could see a handful of them here. And these companies are all over the world. And we train in skills that matter, skills that help predict performance and engagement and motivation in the workplace. And one of those things that we also do, other than teach and develop people, is we learn. LifeLabs Learning. We learn from the companies that we work with. And that's what we do is we try to extract what do great leaders and managers do. When it comes to managing distributed, hybrid, and remote teams, right, what we cared about was cutting through the noise and simplifying complexity. Today, we're going to look at 3 buckets to double down on, or just to use a little bit of technology pun, we're going to ask you to double click on 3 areas. I know it's a little cheesy, but that's okay. Double click or double down on these 3 areas. And the goal for you might be to look at the 3 areas that we're going to focus on today and say, okay, what are some of the habits that we may have picked up on, or we've just never addressed being remote and hybrid and distributed? And then how can I strengthen some of those good habits? Because I know that what we go through today, some of it's not going to feel incredibly new, which is okay. What we found is that even things that are familiar to people, so, whether, skills, habits, they're not always as widespread and common as you think. So how can we strengthen as leaders, as people ops leaders, as managers, how can we strengthen those good habits? So it's going to give you a vocabulary to name what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. That's it. And here are the 3 areas to double down in, or what we'll say double click on: communication, connection, and energy. When you look up what are the top challenges named by remote workers, look it up on any website that you want, any browser that you go to, just look up what are the top challenges of remote and hybrid workers. Look it up on any one of your AI chatbots. What are the top challenges? And you're going to see a list of them. And what we find is that when you boil them down, we found that distills into these 3 categories. The ones where we can really develop as humans the skills to manage. So we're going to go through each one. So let's talk about managing communication. It's one of the most important things in terms of getting work done and getting things done. I want you to open up chat and name one. So would you guess, right? So if you had to guess as to a top communication problem in a remote or hybrid workplace, what would be one communication problem? Go into chat. I want this to be a peer learning environment, not just me, because I know you know a lot of this stuff. So let's extract our own learning. Yeah. Okay. So again, we didn't even have to look this up. You didn't have to look it up. You will feel it. You feel it, and people have been feeling it for years, despite going hybrid. Some of you have been doing this for a few years now. There's still communication problems. So obviously, Lisa, you named the elephant in the room. Can we change people's time zones? No. But we absolutely can take into account, are there people, who are the people that are generally left out of conversations possibly? and we forget to fill them in, right? Because time zones do present those issues. Uh, yes, right, Debbie. But yeah, exactly. Going to the assumption that people know things, it's a top challenge. People just, it's interesting how we've doubled down on a lot of our written communication, and even meetings have people are in more meetings than they've ever been in, but still a gap in people not being tuned in to important decisions or changes at the company. Collaboration is challenging. Catherine, who's on first? Yeah, exactly. Just so it's just we can't even. There's back and forth asynchronous. There's not a lot of time, to bump into someone in the office and go, "Hey, by the way, did you get that email? Who was that? Who were you talking?" Cleaning up and getting context for things can be difficult. Misreading tone because we're over relying on written communication. Yep, things trickle down. They're not clear. Exactly. There's missing context. Context just does not filter downwards to people as we have one small gathering to another small gathering. There's a lack of connection. We'll talk about connection as its own specific challenge, but yes, feeling out of the loop, lack of it, regular check-ins. So you've named a lot of things, right? So one is lack of quick feedback loops, and that's due to a lot of things. It's like we can't just we write something to someone, and there's the tone is missing, there's information missing. We can't just quickly clean up information, and that's sometimes at an office you can, but then you have people virtually. It's just difficult, right? So you see the tilted head, trying to figure out what's really going on. What does this person really mean? Is there information that I'm not getting? And then you have an email chain that's way too long. Uneven distribution of knowledge continues to be a challenge. People forgetting to we forget to inform others, folks who are historically left out of conversations, lack of context in general. Again, over reliance on written communication. There's also the channels which we use to communicate matter. And so why are we doing this? Why has this person not responded to me? What do they really mean? What was the reason behind this decision? We sort of what we've seen is there's the speed quality around communication. And while hybrid work and remote work have in some ways sped up our ability to communicate, we've seen a decrease in quality. And what we tend to see across companies who are working remotely and in hybrid setups, and I've seen it for years now, is unclear communication norms. In fact, a lot of the problems that you see with communication, a lot of the challenges you feel, like the ones that you see up here, tend to stem simply from a lack of norms and expectations shared by a group of people, whether it's a small team or it's a large department, or even, yes, even an entire organization. How should I communicate? And that's what we're going to focus on first. And some of you have done this. Some of you have done this already. What we've seen over the years as the most scalable, meaning it could be spread out throughout the organization and grow with the organization. The most scalable fix is teams and organizations creating what we call, this is what we've dubbed it, a communication playbook. What is a communication playbook? You're familiar, many of you, almost all of you are familiar with an employee handbook. You have one. I know some of you have employee handbooks and you don't use it enough. It's not utilized as a resource. It's a scalable resource. That's what it's supposed to be, for all employees to have a shared context for how we do things at this company. And what we found, though, is that over the years of remote and hybrid work, some of the top performing hybrid teams, what they've done is they've said, well, if we just want to write down and make explicit how we're going to communicate with each other. So you could see an example. I'll just let you browse this. You probably already have been. Now, this is a simple, I would call it example of what might go in a communication playbook. And you'll actually see in our remote hybrid playbook that you have access to, we've given you a template for this, which expands upon different areas of hybrid work that you might want to look into. But this is simple, and it's not, it could change over time, but it lays out like what are the tools that we use to get our work done, the tools we use to communicate, And we've seen this happen on small teams and as well as large departments. And we've even seen organizations do this, which is they've started to really define explicitly, how are we going to use this tool? And then what are some agreements and norms and expectations that we have with this tool, with this communication channel? And you could see here, like for instance, email at LifeLabs, this is an essential form of communication. And we have, this is an example, a few examples of different norms that we have at LifeLabs. But even Google Chat has evolved over time. For instance, I would say Google Chat right now at our company over the last, I would say, year has become less optional and more essential, but specifically for, I would call it, those quick questions. Meaning, if I need an answer within 5 minutes, or this question, this conversation takes less than 5 minutes, I'm going to use a G chat, likely. Right? So you start to see that over time, communication channels start to shift, the ways that we communicate start to shift. But what's really cool, and we've seen this happen in other companies and other teams and at LifeLabs, is we get, each team has its own playbook and we get to update it as we go along. And I want to see in chat for any of you, I want to kind of extract, I want you to think about your own team, the people you work with most. Now, you could think about your organization, because I know some of you are people ops leaders. You're thinking about the whole company. So this could be within your own team or even at your company. I want you to put in chat one explicit communication agreement, meaning you're confident that everyone on your team, if you're thinking about a team, or everyone at your company is very clear that we do this, we do X when we communicate. Just see if you could come up with one agreement that you have. You can't. Melissa with the crickets. But I want you to look at some of these. I love the ones. I think this is one of the simplest things that people can do, is start to ask, start to really look at what are agreements and norms that people have in the workplace that really allow them to communicate effectively and solve challenges, right? Let's make it explicit that when we're in Zoom, if to enhance participation, everyone uses the raise hand feature. Do you want to make that an explicit norm on your team? The only next step will be to write it down somewhere. Have it as like your team communication playbook that everyone could bookmark. Some of you are just saying, we use Microsoft Teams, that's all we do. Do you have norms and agreements when you're using it? We have another one, which is 48-hour response time to internal emails. Right? What's your response time? Anything like that? What are your dark hours? Those are examples of communication agreements and norms. Sarah, I like it. So we see some more in-depth responses here. Quarterly town halls, cameras always on. And what we see, Sarah, we'll talk about this, is having a norm or agreement with that, which is cameras off, just let people know what you're doing. Right? So having camera off, eating lunch, right? That being a norm and expectation. But Sarah, you've given some really good examples of what we might see in a communication playbook. Yeah, Miranda, it's like having something and then not being able to stick to it. That's what happens. If it's not written down, if it's not made explicit, if it's not co-created, whether it's with the leaders or the internal team, it becomes this is some people do this and some people don't. Right? So yeah, you're seeing response time norms, Slack norms, cameras free norms. Sarah, this is good. We're going to talk about camera rituals, FaceTime rituals. No internal meetings Fridays, Jay. Yep. So all of these things that you're seeing in chat, except for the crickets and the we don't know, we don't have any, would go into communication. That's my call to action to you. If you have the ability to engage leaders at your company, and depending on your size, I know there's different scopes of how you could do this. But if you have the ability to engage with leaders at your company to see if there's opportunity to create consistency within communication and create a playbook for your company, great, go for it. If it's just within your own team, maybe with your direct reports. So I manage a team of about 11 people, right? Maybe I could do that. Create norms and expectations, right? So team playbook as your action number one. Do we have an explicit capture system essentially for how we communicate? Now let's move on to the next one. Speaking of communication playbooks, a lot of the ways in which we communicate is documentation, right? We're in meetings, we are working asynchronously, there's different channels, there's different programs and platforms that we use to get our work done. And so one of the things we've seen from really effective hybrid teams is they focus on their documentation and what we call their capturing habits. So ABC, always be capturing. Information gets lost, information doesn't get passed down, or information doesn't get captured in the right places. It's a common challenge that people deal with in hybrid workplaces. Now, we're not just talking about the most common things like where do we find the meeting agenda? Although I still see in these environments, in these remote environments, one big issue is this. I have a meeting on my calendar. My calendar's full of them. There's no meeting agenda. So it's like, even those common things can be challenging for people. But, where we store our goals for the team or where we capture deadlines, commonly, definitely make sure you have good systems for capturing those. No one's trying to figure it out. But I think there's also, do we have good capturing habits and systems for decisions and the conversations that happen in one-on-ones? Because again, we are scattered, we are distributed. People have little ad hoc meetings here and there, one-on-ones here and there. So when we have a conversation, how do we document that in ways that may, help other people, especially if it needs to get transferred, that knowledge? Especially decision making, where does it happen? On Slack, it's hard to find, and you see a lot of people still complaining. We make decisions on Slack, and then nobody knows where it is. Everyone's trying to find it. So what capture systems are best when it comes to decision making? Where should they be? Insights and learning extractions. So we have retros. Where do those get stored? Where do those get captured? Predictions like time estimates and hypotheses, and even I know some people say they're taking notes in meetings. I know people do that. Hey, I'm taking notes. Don't worry about it. And then no one sees it. So what I'd like you to do is think for 30 seconds about your capturing habits, like your ABC habits. And this is the way to do this. It doesn't have to be complex. It could be asking yourself, what is one area where me and my team could be better at capturing information and documenting? What's one area? Think about what's one area where I have trouble finding information, when people have trouble finding information. Jot that down for yourself. Which I didn't mention. Have a piece of paper, a note nearby. Like, what is one area that my team could be better at capturing? Status updates, Maureen. Great. Good. It's a great example. Exactly. We recorded, but I can't find the recording. So Amanda, right? We record these meetings, but we actually don't have a good place to make sure that information, that recording link, gets to people that it needs to get to. And that's just another challenge. It's different if everybody's in the room and it's an in-person workplace. No one's sitting there with a video camera recording an in-person meeting, not usually. But now all of a sudden we're recording meetings, which could be great for spreading information, but it doesn't matter if we haven't don't have a capture system to allow people to actually get to it. Yeah. State the purpose of a meeting. Exactly, Janet. So it's thinking about, like, where are we capturing purposes of meetings? Like something is meeting agenda. So we have co-create a communication playbook. In a communication playbook could include your capturing habits. Where do we document? How are we going to capture things? Here's the last thing I'll focus on, and it's what we call context statements. What are context statements? Here are some examples. This is not groundbreaking. It is not groundbreaking information to know that, these types of statements, when we're sharing information, these types of statements actually help us communicate. But what happens, like I said, speed and quality. In hybrid environments, speed of communication has sacrificed on quality. So one other, I'd say pro tip, it's a skill to be thinking of is what are my context, what's my context habit? When I share information, where do I need to be more explicit with, if it's a decision, am I giving the background for this decision or the reasoning behind this decision? When I'm delegating tasks, so when others are delegating tasks, are they sharing why the task matters so that I can prioritize the task effectively? Are they giving me context as to what success looks like? Here's what success looks like with this task. And this is something I think, especially for managers, to be role modeling, because we send out an email or people send a message on Teams or on Slack or on GChat. And what's missing is the context needed to actually do the task, to move forward quickly, to understand what needs to be done and what success looks like. So that's the last double down area with the communication is how well are we sharing context when we communicate? Where do we have weak context? So what I'd like you to do, and we could do this throughout the session, we're going to do this for each of those three areas: communication, connection, and energy. But I'd like you to write down communication. And we've given you a few fixes: the playbook, documentation, right? Like you're capturing habits and using more context, and really double down on sharing context. But on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being your hybrid setup, 10, you have optimized communication. It's really high. Our communication habits are great. Our norms are established and explicit. 1, we got nothing. we have no explicit communication norms and agreements. We have our capturing habits are really poor. Information gets lost. It's hard to access. Information doesn't get filtered to the people it needs to. And there's lack of context shared in general. Communication is weak. That's a 1. But in chat, I want you to share your score. Be honest where you were at. We're not keeping count. We're not testing you. We're not testing you. But it is for you to now engage in that conversation. That's my call to action is, are you going to remember everything? No, but you have a link to our playbook. And Shannon, I know you mentioned this. We're going to send that link again to our remote and hybrid playbook, which we talk more about communication playbooks, capturing habits. But it's really about being able to have conversations with your team, with your leadership, and really ask them, hey, communication is an issue. Here are the common challenges that people are dealing with. How would you rate, your skills, your habits when it comes to communication? What are some challenges that you're still facing? So that being a big area that if we made an adjustment, so if for Cherie or Annette or Laura, if you took a 5 to a 6 or a 7 to an 8, what would that be like? Susan, don't worry about going 3 to 10. Susan, what would it be like to turn it from a 3 to a 4? And we train and develop managers on a lot of these things. And I know that also Charter has a lot of great information about communication in the workplace as well. But for those of you who are, hi, Jay, I love it. It makes sense that an organization like Charter would be at a 9. And I would say at LifeLabs, we've been doing this for years. We've been working with companies who do this well, and we just take what they do and we apply it at LifeLabs. So I would say we're probably at an 8 or 9 as well. So that's my call to action to you: managing communication, some few fixes. Let's get into the next part. Connection. And you've heard it before, you've seen it. Isolation, reported by remote employees, even hybrid employees as well, right, who go to the workplace. So feeling isolated, feeling disconnected from people, lack of, we'll call it, quality interaction. Human beings, we are social beings. We're wired to especially be monitoring in-group, out-group. So I know that our craving for socialness varies. Some of you love working from home. You love it. And it's not just because you're more productive. It's because you don't crave a lot of the social interaction that happens in the workplace. You don't need it. So it's okay. But here's the thing: when we think about in-group, out-group, there's still this element of, do I feel a sense of belonging? Do I feel like I have quality relationships with people? And when I'm, do I feel like a valued member of this group? That's in some ways what we're talking about here. And it's harder. It's harder to achieve real, I would call it solid in-group dynamics in hybrid workplaces, and that's fine. It might continue to be a challenge. There's also just by being distant, physical distance from people and lack of face time with people. There's just the social exclusion, the chances of feeling socially excluded are higher. And hybrid doesn't necessarily make that easier, especially have people coming into the office at different days of the week. Some people who never go into the office, they miss out completely on in-person dynamics. So here's some fixes. And this is not new necessarily, but we have found that FaceTime, cameras being on, especially when we're in remote environments, how do we optimize our use of this virtual box that we're in and these boxes that we're in? It can be exhausting to be on virtual meetings all day long. So it's not about that. It really is about, when do we want to have cameras on? I know some of you already mentioned that your explicit norm for some of you is cameras always on. But I do want to invite this question. If we were going to be discerning, we're working remotely, we're working hybrid, when do we especially want to have our cameras on and utilizing those cameras effectively? Just put in chat, like, what's one reason or one moment where we want to have cameras on and using them well? Specific types of meetings, specific types of moments. Right. Exactly. So, is there a one size fits all answer? Not really. I think some of us can come to agreement, though. If we were working together, we might come to an agreement as to, this is a time where we're going to normalize. It's going to be an expectation for us to have our cameras on. And if that's a one-on-one, maybe it's certain discussions or certain types of discussions. For some of you, it had to do with group size. For others, it had to do with the emotional aspect of a discussion. And that's something that I talk to managers, leaders, and teams about. I talk to people about the nature of hybrid work. We want to send signals that tell people, right, that I care, and I think a lot of that is important in the workplace. When we think about belonging and in-group dynamics, it's like, I want to send signals that I care, and I don't want to send signals that I don't care. But something that I want you all to consider, and this is happening, it happens every single day, is that you'll have a person on your team. It might be a small meeting, maybe 4 or 5 people, and one person is, maybe it's more that informal part of the meeting. They're sharing something that's important to them. Maybe it's me and I'm sharing about, something that my son did, like a playful moment. And as they're sharing something that their son did, and they're sharing all this thing, somebody just decides, oh, boop, and their screen is off. And it's not, you'd argue like, that's not that big of a deal. Someone turns their screen off, but it does send unintentional signals to people. And I know some of you have been in that position where someone turned their camera off, or a few people turned their camera off as you were sharing. And for some reason, it sent this, like, it almost like a little micro signal, like something's wrong here. In fact, in chat, put like a little emoji if you've ever felt a moment in which someone or a group of people turned their cameras off in a meeting while you were sharing. You're sharing, people turned their cameras off, and you had some negative response. If you've ever felt that, just throw an emoji or something in chat, right? It was me, raise a hand, whatever. I just want you to put it in there, because I want to make this a universal experience for people. Maybe not all of you have felt it recently, you can't remember, but and not everyone's responding. And Sherry, I think giving people the benefit of the doubt is good, right? They probably just had something going on. It's not that we think people are doing it like in a bad way. Like, they don't care about what I have to say. They don't care about me. They're disrespecting me. It's not that that's true, but those thoughts come up anyway. And it's something I do want to point out. It's not like you could fix this overnight. But one of the things to consider is, what are our norms? What are our cameras norms? And again, starting small, I think, is easier when it comes to your team. Again, going back to that communication playbook, hey, do we want to create some norms and agreements for ourselves, especially if you notice that, cameras aren't being used in at times in which I think it would be good to create connection or enhance collaboration. Because when your camera's off, you're less likely to participate. It just happens. Turning cameras off can send signals to people that what they're saying doesn't matter. Um, it sends negative signals despite our best intentions. So what are our cameras norms? And that's something else to consider. As fix number one, what expectations do we want to set? And I'm just checking chat. So hard to invite folks to turn their cameras off. Yeah, I'm just reading some of the things that people are writing in chat. I think they're good. Yeah, exactly. I think having cameras off should be absolutely just as normal as having them on. You just got to be considering, what impacts do we want to have? Like, when do we want to have a positive impact when it comes to FaceTime? When do we want to build better connection? Hey, let's see if we can utilize our cameras in a way that works. And when do we want to protect energy and protect productivity? Maybe we could create cameras off norms as well. Yep, Claire, absolutely. Right. So there's different expectations and norms for having cameras off too. So this is not about always on being the right answer. It's about norms and expectations being established by the team. Now let's go into the second piece, because I think it relates. The quality of interactions. So when we think about connection, quality interactions is one of the ways in which we build connection. But if you actually look up some of the top challenges for hybrid and remote employees, there's decrease in quality. And here are three top challenges named. Now, spontaneous social interactions, they're harder remotely. Everything's a meeting. Even any spontaneous coffee chat is not spontaneous anymore, because you have to schedule it. Being in the workplace, that's, I think, why hybrid setups are really starting to pick up as well, is that there's the chance of those spontaneous social interactions that we're missing in a fully remote environment. But again, right, this is still an issue that comes up. Folks, I want to highlight the second one, because it is not to say that going into the office means that we're not going to have virtual meetings. But as we go hybrid and continue to be hybrid, you know it for yourself personally. If you go into the office and make your commute, if that's you, and you have to go in and you spend your whole day in virtual meetings without any quality in-person interaction, I am going to guess that you're going to resent it. You're not going to appreciate going into the office to be in virtual meetings and just heads down at your desk doing individual work without any quality in-person interaction. So this one I want to really highlight as organizations start to bring people into the office. And then, of course, this other one, which is, people are going to miss out on in-office team binding, which is just a challenge in and of itself. So what is the fix? It's a question. There are multiple answers. I think if we did enough group work today, we can come up with all of the answers to this question. But I want you to pause and just think, what would quality interactions look like in a hybrid workplace? So that might mean in person or virtual. What would a quality interaction look like? Just pause and think about that for 10 seconds. So this is good. I'd like to start with this aspect of it. Of virtual is one area, but I want to get to in person, because we are so used to in-person work. This is different. This is a new in-person work. Hybrid represents the new in-person dynamic. Organizations are literally restructuring the physical space of their workplaces to attend to what's needed in a hybrid environment, where people are coming in 1, 2, 3 days a week, different days. It's much more collaborative. There's no fixed desks. But I want you to, in chat, what would quality interactions look like? This could be in-person focus. I think that's a really good one to look at. What would in-person hybrid interactions look like? What would they focus on? And I love that this is the peer learning is the aspect of this that I want to highlight, because I don't have all the answers. It's a question to live into as we move into hybrid and continue in hybrid. What are people craving? What type of work should we be doing when we're in the office versus when we're remote? How do we want to prepare for in-person interactions? Because we could do things weekly, we can do things monthly or quarterly. How often do we want to have these interactions, right? Is it, do we want to do a quarterly big event and then monthly it's a bit smaller? So look at chat. You could see the variation. I love it that people have their own ideas. And that's something I'd like you to do, is take what people are writing, but also think about this for yourselves and really engaging with your managers, leaders, and teams with this question. Yep. Dr. Angela, I love it. The speed dating, for sake of not using the word dating, which is totally fine. People associate dating, though, with romance. We've called it speed connection. We just called it speed connection. For those of you who have never done this virtually, speed connection is usually giving people a question or a prompt, putting them in breakout rooms for 1 to 2 minutes, then rotating those breakout rooms and giving people another connection prompt. Something like, what's an embarrassing thing? What's something embarrassing that you did when you grew up? Like it's just, that's what speed dating or speed connection looks like. Right. So feel free to take anything that you're seeing in chat. Right. And we have some ideas too. I'm not going to get into all of them. Lastly, when it comes to connection, is the manager relationship. This is our bread and butter at LifeLabs. We train and develop leaders, managers, and teams. We focus very heavily, though, on the manager direct report relationship. It's more important than it's ever been. Being able to have skillful one-on-one conversations is almost, it's more important than we've ever seen it, because we are not always together at the same time. They have to be quality. If we're going to come together, this is again this is another norm or expectation for in-person work. Let's have our one-on-one when we're in person, not when we're virtual, right? So like even that small change, big impact. But being skillful in a one-on-one, what I recommend is train your managers. Train your managers how to have really good one-on-ones, how to be good coaches, how to provide effective feedback, how to ask good questions, how to help support productivity so that when the person leaves and goes back to their home, they're really set up for success. They know what to work on, stuff like that. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you measure how you're doing with connection? 10 high, 1 really low. Give yourself a score, type in a chat if you're bold enough. All right, so we've covered managing connection, managing communication, managing connection. A lot of great ideas with connection. I love it. A lot of such good ideas coming in the chat. Let's go to the third one, energy. Now, one of the benefits of remote work is actually we've seen some reduction in burnout caused by work. Burnout's caused by a lot of different factors. A lot of it's mismanaged stress response. We're living in stressful times, so burnout tends to increase just by virtue of that stressors. But here's some energy issues that people deal with. Work-life boundaries are blurring. You work where you live. So that integration of work and life that's really happened around the world, some folks are still having trouble navigating that environment. And some managers and teams are having trouble with that. So there's that. There's also change in ambiguity. Things happening at a distance, decision-making happening, things that are outside of my control. There's a lot of, there's just like a heavy, what we call cognitive load. And some of that causes burnout too. So let's talk about some of the fixes here. Now, one, this is interesting. You won't see this term anywhere. Meaning if you look up on the internet, energy coaching, you might get a lot of different, information that has nothing to do with what I think I'm talking about. At LifeLabs, what we talk about. Energy coaching deals with how we can manage our own and others' energy throughout the day and the week. And, this arguably is, important if you're in a remote or hybrid or in-person setting, how am I managing my energy? Because we have peaks and troughs throughout the day. And there are also certain times of the day in which you have a lot, certain times of the day in which you don't have energy. There are certain tasks in which, if you do that task, it takes your energy away. And then certain tasks in which you do it and it just doesn't cost you that much energy. Like, for instance, I lean high towards extroverted. When I'm doing analytical work, I might need energy for that, because if I don't have energy for analytical type work where I'm working by myself, I'm, maybe analyzing data, creating project plans, creating learning plans. I don't mind it. I do it well, but it's going to cost me energy and I'm going to be pretty exhausted. And then maybe I have my one-on-ones later on in the day and they build my energy back up. So what types of work makes sense throughout the day? And you could do this if you're a manager or leader. You can really ask questions to help your direct reports, right? When do you want to do your analytical work? When should we do our creative work? And again, this is probably not something to think about at a organizational level, but definitely something to think about. We know for great managers right now, they're helping maintain energy of their teams. They're structuring work in ways that match that energy and help people work effectively throughout the day, right? Now, also break taking. So energy coaching also deals with break taking. And what we found from remote workers, especially, is breaks, they don't happen as much. In fact, some of you, you're going to leave this webinar and you're going to go do the laundry, which is awesome. You feel highly productive. I just left the webinar, I did the laundry. Now, if doing the laundry is an energizing task, great, good for you. But if it actually is sacrificing energy that then you have to leave, you do the laundry, and then you come back to work and you don't have as much energy, well, that probably wasn't the best thing to do. And that's something we're also seeing in those virtual environments, is this integration where we never get a break. And there's three types of breaks that we see people struggling with working in hybrid environments: micro, meso, macro. A micro break, well, that involves small breaks throughout the day. You've seen some examples here. Small breaks throughout the day, we've seen that is becoming a challenge for people, and it causes a lack of energy overall, right? So you may have been highly productive, but you're feeling stressed, you're not feeling rested. Meso breaks deals with planning breaks during the week. That could be protecting a lunch hour. That could be scheduling in a walk that routinely recurring happens. It could be looking at your week and seeing the busy days and making sure, oh, I need to block off this time because I don't want any meetings during that time. I have way too many meetings. Or specifically, meso breaks could be having a start-stop ritual. Each day, this is how I start my day. This is how I stop my day. It helps the brain turn on and helps the brain turn off. That's something we see from really good remote workers. And then macro breaks deals with longer term planning and taking longer term breaks. That could be, there's a big project that you're doing. Have we planned a pause so that we're not taking on, the whole team isn't taking on new work right after we finish that big project? Do we plan in celebrations and pauses at the end of a quarter, at the end of a busy period? I know many of you know when your busy period is. Have you looked at the end of that busy period? Are you just waiting for the holidays? Have you planned in some break to help you through the busy period? If you haven't already, go ahead, plan that vacation. And vacation's at least 3 to 5 days. Here's the thing I want you to think about. This is great. When it comes to energy coaching, here's some way that you can apply this for yourself and others. What are you best and worst at? Micro, meso, or macro breaks? Small breaks, planning in your breaks throughout the week, or macro breaks, those longer term breaks? What are you worst at? In chat, what are you worst at? Vicky is so quick on the keys. What are you worst at? The micro breaks, the meso breaks, or the macro breaks? And I guarantee you could start to ask people in your team this, and you might see a trend. You might see a trend, and it could be something that you can establish new norms and expectations around. If you're a manager like me, you can help direct reports. You can help your team members. We know managers do this already. They help their team members create break-taking routines or help them take breaks when they need to, because we all have weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. So that's something else, is energy coaching. Other than energy coaching and managing our energy well and helping others do that, grabbing the positive. Highlight small wins for people. That brings energy. People need quality feedback. Send managers to a feedback skills workshop. Feedback is, we know it's important already, but it's still the quality of feedback. And also making contributions visible to leaders and to others. One thing that remote and hybrid workers will say is that some people get more exposure to leaders than other people. And so my work doesn't get highlighted. I work remotely. My work is in the background. People do not see me working. And so, one thing to note is whose work is not visible. How can we highlight and spotlight their work more effectively? Grabbing the positives, highlighting their work. And then finally, extracting learning. Simply, one of the things that people are craving now is just growth and progress. They just want to feel like they're growing ongoingly. Helping people just ask the question, hey, what are you learning? How are you growing this week? That can help boost energy throughout the week. Like, don't take that stuff for granted. So give yourself a score when it comes to energy. 10, we're doing great when it comes to managing energy. 1, we really stink. No one takes breaks. We don't grab the positive. That'll be your final score. And again, I just want to thank you for your time, energy, and attention. We're reaching our end. I want you to invite you to double click on one of these areas. Pick the lowest scoring area, double click on that this week and see what happens. See what changes make. Small change, big impact. All right. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Jay, I'll pass it over to you to finish us off.
Excellent. Brendan, thank you for that really wonderful session. I took a lot of notes, learned a lot, and I can tell from the chat, so has everybody else. We're glad that you all joined us. To answer some of the questions, yes, we will push out the recording of this entire session if you missed any of it. You can also find it and previous LifeLabs sessions on a variety of topics. Actually, if you go to charterworks.com, on the events tab, you'll find on-demand viewing of all the sessions that we've done over the last 2 or 3 years. Certainly recommend that you do that. Last couple of quick things. We have not yet scheduled next quarter's version of this masterclass, but keep an eye out and we will send that information to you as soon as we have nailed it down, likely in June. These are going to be done quarterly, and we'll have the topic for you then as well. And 2 other quick things to just mark your calendar with. One is on June 5th in New York City and live streamed anywhere. Charter will be hosting a half-day summit on employer branding and how to really lean into improving that so that you can win the talent agenda. And then the date has been set for our 5th annual Charter Workplace Summit, also in October, in New York in person, live streamed everywhere. And that is on October 14th this year. So mark your calendars. We hope to see you at those. And we'll be back in touch with the next masterclass, Charter Leadership Masterclass, powered by LifeLabs Learning very soon. Thank you again for your time. Brendan, thank you for your expertise and partnership.
I loved it. I love it as usual. Jay, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for your time and energy. We'll see you at a future event. Have an awesome rest of your day.